In this video, we're going to be going over assignment number 5, which is worth 40 points. First, I'll show you the PDF, and then I'll give you some guidance on how to set this up and start attacking this problem. So just a reminder on all of these assignments, the assignment grading sheet, when I'm grading your assignments, this is what I'm using. So I'm going through this rubric here, and for the patient class, 10 points is the max, and if you get points deducted, I'll put it here and I'll put comments. But I just go through methodically. I go here, 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 here. I keep going, total points. So definitely use this and make sure you got all aspects of the assignment covered. So the first thing I like doing is there's a lot of text here, and I like modifying it to my liking. So I will do something like a copy and paste. So I'll copy this text and I'll throw it into Microsoft Word. Okay, so that same text I put into Word, and I also have my Eclipse over here. So I can kind of go through both at the same time and also make sure it matches what I'm doing in my actual Java code. The first thing I notice when I read through the directions is we'll be calculating patient charges. So I'll probably go ahead and bold that, underline it, make sure it stands out so I kind of know the objective of the overall assignment. Then I'll read through it once and just have a general understanding of what we're doing. And then I'll come back and I'll start breaking this up, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so the first sentence is write a class name patient that has member variables, and it lists a whole bunch of member variables. So to simplify this, I can really probably delete a lot of this. And since I know these are member variables, go ahead and do something like this. So I have my class patient, and then these are going to be all of the data members. So that's pretty easy to break out. And then it also says should have a constructor that accepts, and that's a typo actually, an argument for each member variable. Okay, so I am going to delete this and then bring this down to the next line. And then the patient class should also have accessor and mutator functions for each member variable. And if you remember, accessor and mutator are just fancy words for getter and setter. So not a big deal. And what I can do is just put getter/setters. And then just to make this easier on myself, I'll make this bullet points and spread this out a little bit. So you can see this to me is easier to read than a giant paragraph full of information. It's up to you. Maybe you find it easier to use those paragraphs, but I like breaking this up because this more resembles the code that I'm going to create on the right-hand side. So I've already created homework number 5 project in Eclipse, and what I'm going to do now is create the patient class. So go ahead and right-click, hit new class, and this is going to be named patient. It's going to be public, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave this selected. So I've set up my Eclipse to automatically put in file headers. I keep seeing people not putting in file headers, and you keep getting points docked. This is such an easy thing to do, so just make sure you have file headers in all of your classes. The next thing I'm going to do is actually copy and paste these. So right now it looks kind of messy, and it's giving me a lot of problems. But these are all the variables I need. So what I'll do is I'll start breaking these up, just like so. And again, this is just a technique. You don't have to do this. But now I have all of my variables. So really all I have to do now is data types and make sure that they follow naming conventions that are acceptable. So what I'll do here is I'll do string, since that's going to be a first name, and middle name is also going to be a string. A last name can also be a string. Phone number can be a string. Name. And this can also be a string. For me, all of these data types are going to be strings. Now, if you wanted to, you could make the phone number a long or whatever you think is appropriate. But honestly, these are just being stored in a database somewhere. So if they're a string, then that's totally fine as well. And it's actually easier in my opinion. All right, so now for the naming convention. So I'll come in here and I'll just change this to first name, semicolon, and I'll do the same for this, middle name. Let's see, last name here, phone number, semicolon. This name is going to be the emergency contact name. Since I want to follow our naming convention used up here, I'll do something like this. And then I'm going to do emergency contact phone number. You notice how I'm just copying and pasting a lot of this stuff. And then I'm going to delete and make sure I save this real quick. So that's just a technique. You don't have to do that, but that helps me stay organized and make sure that I'm capturing everything that the directions are telling me to. So you could do this the long way, and for first name, come down here and manually write in the getter and then the setter and keep going. But that's very time consuming. And honestly, getters and setters are pretty standard and straightforward. Here's an easier way to do this. If I go ahead and right click somewhere in this Java file, and I go down to source, and you see these options here. There's all these generate options. What I want to do first is say generate getters and setters. And you can see on this menu, let me bring it down a little bit. These are all of my names that I've created over here. And these are what I want getters and setters for. I can either manually select these, like let's say I wanted getters and setters for these two, but I didn't want them for these, then I would just manually select these. The other way to do it is there's stuff over here where I can select all, I can deselect all, and I want getters and setters for all of these. It gives me the insertion point. Right now it's saying after emergency contact phone number, and that's actually where I want it to go. I want it to be after this variable. You can sort them by having the getters first, followed by the setters. You can do it by getter and setter pairs. It's up to you. Me personally, I like doing the getters all in their own little group, followed by the setters. But again, it's totally up to you. So I'll select that. I want these to be public, and I would like to generate method comments. So let's go ahead and see what happens. I'm going to scroll up to the top. So you see it put it right after this contact phone number, emergency contact phone number. And it also gives the return. It gives all of the return types. It basically did all of the hard work for us without us having to do much of anything. So that's a handy little tip. So we've got this one completed. So I'll go ahead and do something like put strike through. So I'm like, all right, I know I got that. And then I'll do the same thing here. So this helps me keep track of what I have done and what I still need to do. So the thing that stands out now is a constructor that accepts an argument for each member variable. So how do I do that? Well, you could do it manually and you could write it out yourself, or right click again, go down to source, and down here, generate constructor using fields. So let's go ahead and do that. So we want each member variable. So we want the constructor to have all of these, and they're already selected. I want this to be public. I do want comments generated. And I'm going to go ahead and select omit call to default constructor super. You don't have to understand what that means quite yet, but it'll just simplify things. And then the insertion point. So where do I want to put this? And normally the constructors are at the top. So you have the data members, then you have constructors, followed by getters and setters, and then followed by effectors, things that you're doing like calculations on and stuff. If I select this, it gives me a range of options. I am going to leave it where it is because that's where I want it. So let's go ahead and generate this. And you can see how awesome this is and how much time this saves me. Not only does it give me Java doc comments, but it does all of the hard work for me. So I've got all of these things now ready to go, and I'll just maybe clean up the formatting a little bit and make them all line up so it looks kind of nice. And there you go. I mean, that first part is completely done. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I strike through. So procedure is going to be something you do on your own. Follow the directions, make sure the procedure is all set up correctly. And then we're going to write a program that uses these classes. So we'll have class patient and we'll have class procedure. And then here you can call this, I don't really call it, I don't really care what you call this. We can just call it class homework 5. That's fine. We have to create an instance of the patient class initialized with sample data that is entered by the user. Okay. Then create an instance of the procedure class for each procedure that is being performed on the patient. All right, so that's going to be its own bullet. And it says there can be multiple procedures that can be performed on each patient. And at the end of the data entry for a patient, display the patient's information about the procedures, and the total charges for the patient. So let me go ahead and just bullet these. So within my homework 5, I'm going to create another class. I'm going to call it homework 5. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to split screen this so I can kind of see. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We need to create an instance of the patient class. Okay, create an instance of the. Now, for me, this is a little bit hard to follow. And what I would prefer to do is not have a Microsoft Word up while I'm trying to code in Java. And then I have maybe my patient class up, and I'll eventually have my procedure class up. So maybe I'll have like 3 screens here. Is I'm going to go ahead and unbullet this. I'm going to copy, and then I'm just going to paste this directly into the program. So now that I've pasted that in there, what I can do is make comments for myself. And how this helps me is I can basically arrange this and make sure I don't miss any information. So I'll usually spread this out within the class itself. And then within main, so you have to declare main up here. This keeps you on track. So it's saying, this is telling you exactly what you need to do. So instance of the patient class initialized with sample data that is entered by the user. So you're probably going to have a scanner and things like that. Then you're going to create an instance of the procedure class that is being performed on the patient. And there can be multiple procedures on each patient. And at the end, display the patient's info and the total charges. So while I didn't give you all of the answers, I at least hopefully got you started on this. You went through the patient.java, that should be good to go. The thing that you're going to have to spend some time on is the procedure and also how this main method is going to work. But you should be set up in a good position to accomplish this homework. If you have any questions, reach out and I'll be happy to help.